Sometimes the biggest miracle begins with the smallest decision, the one no one else is willing to make. Rain hammered the windshield of Ethan Brooks' aging Ford F-150 as he drove home along County Road 18 just outside Cedar Ridge, Colorado. The clock on the dashboard glowed 11:42 p.m., and the old heater pushed out more noise than warmth. It had been another long shift towing broken-down cars, another day chasing bills that never seemed to stop arriving. Yet all Ethan could think about was getting home before his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, woke from another bad dream and wandered into the hallway looking for him. Since losing his wife 4 years earlier, every promise he made to Lily had become sacred. He had promised that no matter how hard life became, she would always come home to kindness, honesty, and a father who never turned away from someone in need. He had no idea that promise was about to change all three of their lives. As Ethan slowed near the old Greyhound bus stop at the edge of town, his headlights swept across a lonely bench soaked by the storm. At first he thought it was a pile of abandoned clothes. Then the shape moved. A young woman sat curled against the metal bench, her long blonde hair damp from the rain, one shoe missing, her thin sweater offering almost no protection from the cold mountain wind. She looked exhausted more than anything else, her head lowered as if the weight of the entire world had settled onto her shoulders. A passing SUV splashed water across the curb without slowing. Another driver glanced her way and kept going. Ethan rested both hands on the steering wheel. He could keep driving. Plenty of people already had. Yet something deep inside him refused to let the image disappear. He parked on the shoulder, grabbed the spare blanket he kept behind the seat for roadside emergencies, and stepped into the rain. "Ma'am," he called gently, careful not to startle her. "Are you okay?" The woman slowly lifted her head. Her blue eyes were unfocused, filled with confusion rather than fear. She tried to stand but immediately lost her balance, catching herself against the bench with a quiet, embarrassed sigh. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I think I made a mess of everything." Ethan draped the blanket over her shoulders before answering. Everyone has nights they wish they could start over. She gave a tired, almost disbelieving laugh. "You shouldn't trust strangers." Ethan smiled softly. "Maybe not, but I can still make sure one gets home safe." She searched his face as though waiting for him to ask questions, demand explanations, or expect something in return. He did none of those things. Instead, he opened the passenger door of his truck, turned the heater to its highest setting, and handed her a bottle of water from the center console. As the truck pulled back onto the empty highway, neither of them noticed the blinking amber alert on a digital billboard several miles behind them. Across America, television stations had just interrupted their evening broadcasts. One of the country's most powerful billionaire CEOs had reported her only daughter missing, and before sunrise, every news station, police department, and social media feed in the nation would be searching for the young woman quietly riding beside a struggling single father who believed he was simply helping a stranger on a rainy night. Morning arrived quietly over Cedar Ridge, painting the pine trees with pale golden light while the last drops of rain clung to the porch railing outside Ethan Brooks' small farmhouse. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the kitchen as bacon sizzled gently in an old cast-iron skillet. Ethan had already been awake for an hour, packing Lily's school lunch with the careful routine of a father who believed ordinary moments mattered more than expensive gifts. Upstairs, the guest bedroom remained silent until a faint creak echoed through the hallway. Olivia Hayes slowly opened her eyes, blinking against unfamiliar sunlight spilling through lace curtains. For a long moment, she stared at the wooden ceiling, confused by the peaceful silence surrounding her. There were no luxury hotel walls, no security guards outside the door, no ringing business phones or endless notifications demanding attention. Only birds singing beyond an open window and the distant laughter of a little girl. She sat up carefully, pressing one hand against her forehead as memories from the previous night returned only in scattered pieces. Zen, cold, a kind stranger, a warm blanket. Her heart tightened with embarrassment. She quietly stepped into the hallway, where Lily nearly bumped into her, while carrying a stack of pancakes almost as large as her smile. The little girl froze for only a second before grinning. "Good morning. Daddy said you probably needed breakfast more than questions." Olivia looked at the child, surprised by such simple kindness. "He really said that?" Lily nodded proudly. "Daddy says people sleep better when they know they are safe." Those words settled deep inside Olivia in a place she had forgotten still existed. She followed Lily into the kitchen, where Ethan stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with the confidence of someone who had learned every household skill through necessity instead of choice. He looked up with an easy smile. "Morning. Coffee is fresh. Orange juice is in the refrigerator. Eat first. Everything else can wait." Olivia hesitated. She expected suspicion. She expected lectures. She expected him to ask who she was, where she came from, or why she had been alone in the rain. Instead, he simply placed another pancake on her plate and returned to the stove. "You're not going to ask my name?" she finally said. Ethan shrugged gently. "You can tell me when you are ready. Sometimes people need a little breakfast before they need a conversation." Lily giggled while pouring maple syrup with complete concentration. "Daddy always says pancakes solve at least half of life's problems." Ethan laughed softly. "Only the first half." Olivia could not remember the last time she had laughed without forcing it. She looked around the modest kitchen with its worn wooden cabinets, family photographs held together by magnets, and crayon drawings covering the refrigerator door. Nothing inside the house was expensive, yet every corner carried evidence of love that could not be purchased. She wrapped both hands around the warm coffee mug, allowing the heat to chase away the last of the night's chill. For the first time in many years, no one recognized her. Family name, no one expected perfection, and no one cared about status or wealth. Outside, the morning news continued spreading across television screens throughout the country. But inside that quiet farmhouse, the missing daughter of one of America's most powerful women simply looked like a tired young stranger sharing breakfast with a father and his little girl who believed kindness should never depend on knowing someone's name. After breakfast, Ethan walked Lily to the front porch where the little yellow school bus stopped every weekday at exactly 8 o'clock. She hugged him tightly before climbing aboard, then turned to wave through the window until the bus disappeared around the bend. It was a ritual neither of them ever skipped. When Ethan returned inside, he found Olivia standing beside the kitchen sink, quietly washing the breakfast dishes despite his earlier protests. Sunlight poured through the window, reflecting across the soap bubbles as she carefully dried each plate with a faded blue towel. It was such an ordinary moment that she almost forgot the world she had left behind. "You do not have to do that," Ethan said with a gentle smile. Olivia shrugged softly. "Maybe I want to." He nodded without arguing. Some people healed by talking. Others healed by doing something useful. Ethan understood the difference. Across the country, however, the morning was anything but ordinary. Television anchors interrupted regular programming. News websites replaced their front pages with a single photograph. Social media feeds filled with the same headline every few seconds. Olivia Hayes, the only daughter of billionaire business leader Victoria Hayes, had disappeared sometime during the previous evening. Helicopters circled major cities. Reporters crowded outside Hayes' global headquarters in New York. Financial analysts speculated about canceled meetings while commentators debated whether the disappearance was connected to the company's upcoming merger worth billions of dollars. A reward of $2 million was announced for verified information leading to Olivia's safe return. Yet inside Ethan's farmhouse, none of those headlines existed. The old television in the living room had not been turned on in nearly a week because Ethan preferred peaceful mornings over endless news. His cell phone rested face down on the kitchen counter with its cracked screen muted while he finished paperwork for the towing company. Olivia noticed the silence and found it strangely comforting. Nobody was chasing quarterly profits. Nobody expected polished speeches. Nobody asked her to smile for cameras. Ethan simply reviewed repair invoices while humming an old country song under his breath. "Do you always live this quietly?" Olivia asked. Ethan looked up from the paperwork. "Most days. Quiet gives people room to hear themselves think." She lowered her eyes. I cannot remember the last time I had that. He studied her expression, but respected the invisible line she had not yet crossed. Whatever you are running from, he said calmly, you do not have to explain it before you are ready. Olivia felt her throat tighten. She had spent years surrounded by people who demanded explanations for everything, yet this man asked for none. Miles away, inside the executive boardroom of Hayes Global, Victoria Hayes stood before an enormous digital map displaying hundreds of flashing search locations. Security experts, attorneys, and investigators filled the room with tense conversations. Every available camera from airports, highways, hotels, and downtown intersections was being reviewed minute by minute. Then one investigator paused the footage from a small traffic camera outside Cedar Ridge. The image was grainy, blurred by heavy rain, but it clearly showed an aging Ford pickup stopping beside a lonely bus shelter before driving away with a passenger inside. Victoria stepped closer to the screen. The truck's faded paint and worn body offered almost nothing to identify its owner. Still, for the first time since her daughter vanished, they had a direction. Meanwhile, Ethan picked up his toolbox and asked Olivia with an easy smile, "Would you like to come with me to the garage today, or would you rather stay here and rest?" She looked at the quiet home one more time before answering, completely unaware that the peaceful morning surrounding them was already becoming the center of a nationwide search. Olivia chose to go with Ethan, and before long his old pickup rolled slowly into Brooks Auto and Towing, a modest repair shop tucked beside a two-lane highway where the scent of motor oil mixed with fresh mountain air. The faded sign above the garage had seen better days, but every customer who stepped through its doors was greeted with the same honest smile. Ethan climbed out carrying his weathered toolbox, while Olivia followed quietly, pulling the borrowed flannel jacket a little tighter around herself. She expected curious questions from everyone inside. Instead, the first mechanic simply waved. "Morning, Ethan." "New friend." Ethan answered with his usual calm. She needed a safe place after the storm. The mechanic nodded once. Then she came to the right place. No one asked for her last name. No one searched her face. No one recognized the woman whose photograph was appearing on televisions across the nation. Throughout the morning, Olivia watched Ethan move from one vehicle to another with patient confidence. He never rushed. He never oversold repairs. When an elderly couple worried they could not afford a replacement alternator, Ethan quietly found a rebuilt part in storage and charged them half the normal price. "You are losing money," Olivia whispered after they left. Ethan wiped his hands with an old shop towel and smiled. "Maybe today, but trust is worth more than one invoice." An hour later, a young delivery driver arrived, looking embarrassed after discovering he had forgotten his wallet. Before the man could apologize twice, Ethan handed him the truck keys anyway. "Bring the payment next week," he said. "You still have deliveries to make." Olivia stared in disbelief. "What if he never comes back?" Ethan shrugged gently. "Then I hope someone shows him the same grace someday." Those simple words lingered in her thoughts far longer than she expected. She had spent years inside conference rooms where every decision was measured by profit margins, quarterly reports, and shareholder expectations. Kindness had always required approval. Here was simply part of everyday life. Around noon they shared sandwiches beneath the shade of an old cottonwood tree behind the garage. Ethan unfolded a worn blanket across the grass, while Olivia looked toward the distant mountains glowing beneath the Colorado sky. The silence between them felt comfortable rather than awkward. Finally she spoke. "Do you ever wish you had more?" Ethan looked toward the horizon before answering. "Of course I do. I wish Lily still had her mother. I wish I could give her every opportunity in the world. But wanting more should never make us forget to appreciate enough." Olivia lowered her eyes. She could not remember hearing anyone define success without mentioning money. After lunch, they stopped by Lily's elementary school to deliver the lunchbox she had accidentally left in the truck that morning. The little girl ran across the playground with a bright smile, wrapping her arms around Ethan before noticing Olivia beside him. "You came back," Lily said happily. Olivia smiled without thinking. "I guess I did." Lily reached for her hand as naturally as if they had known each other for years. For one unexpected moment, Olivia felt something she had not experienced since childhood. She did not feel like an executive's daughter, a public figure, or someone expected to carry the weight of an enormous family legacy. She simply felt welcome. Neither she nor Ethan noticed the dark SUV parked quietly across the street. Inside, two private investigators studied a photograph on a tablet before glancing back toward the repair shop. One of them slowly lowered the device, his expression changing from uncertainty to quiet realization. After nearly 24 hours, they believed they had finally found the missing woman everyone else was desperately searching for. The two investigators remained inside the dark SUV, saying nothing for several long seconds as children laughed across the school playground. One finally spoke into a secure radio with calm precision. "We have visual confirmation. Subject appears safe. She is with an adult male and one minor child. There are no signs of distress." Hundreds of miles away in New York, the atmosphere inside Hayes' global headquarters shifted instantly. Every conversation stopped when the message reached Victoria Hayes. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, releasing the first steady breath she had taken since her daughter disappeared. Relief came first, then concern, then questions. "Who is the man?" she asked quietly. Within minutes, analysts filled enormous screens with information gathered from public records. Ethan Brooks, 39 years old, widowed, owner of Brooks Auto and Towing. No criminal record, respected by his community. A father raising his daughter alone. Victoria studied his photograph in silence. The image showed a man in grease-stained work clothes standing beside an old pickup truck, smiling at a little girl holding an oversized fishing pole. Nothing about him matched the dangerous possibilities that had haunted her imagination all night. Even so, she trusted facts more than appearances. "Prepare the convoy," she said. "I want to hear the truth from my daughter herself." Back in Cedar Ridge, Ethan locked the garage shortly before sunset. The air carried the scent of pine trees and cooling pavement while the mountains glowed orange beneath the evening sky. Lily skipped ahead toward the truck, proudly carrying a small paper drawing she had made during art class. "Miss Olivia," she called happily, "I drew all three of us." Olivia accepted the picture with a surprised smile. Three stick figures stood beneath a bright yellow sun beside a tiny wooden house. Above them, written in uneven crayon letters, were the words, "Kind people stay together." Olivia felt something tighten inside her chest. No expensive gift she had ever received carried as much meaning as that simple drawing. She folded it carefully and slipped it into the pocket of the borrowed flannel jacket. As they drove home, Ethan stopped at a neighborhood grocery store. He compared prices carefully before choosing the least expensive carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, fresh bread, and a small container of chocolate ice cream. Lily looked up hopefully. "Because it is Friday?" Ethan smiled. "Because everybody deserves dessert once in a while." Olivia quietly reached into her purse, intending to pay without making it obvious. Before she could remove a single bill, Ethan gently shook his head. "You are our guest." She looked at him with genuine confusion. "You hardly know me." Ethan placed the groceries into the truck bed before answering. Sometimes people need generosity before they deserve explanations. The words settled over the evening like the last warm light before sunset. Yet only a few miles away, a procession of black sport utility vehicles rolled onto the highway leading toward Cedar Ridge. Their headlights stretched across the asphalt in perfect formation while a discreet security helicopter monitored traffic from distance. Local residents noticed the unusual convoy and stepped onto their porches, wondering what important visitor could possibly be coming to their quiet mountain town. By the time Ethan's pickup turned onto the gravel road leading home, the first black vehicles had already reached the entrance to his property. Neighbors slowed their cars. Porch lights flickered on one by one. Curious whispers drifted through the cool evening air. Ethan frowned as he parked beside the house, completely unaware that the peaceful life he had carefully protected for his daughter was about to collide with one of the most powerful families in America. The gravel beneath Ethan's tires crunched to a stop as silence settled across the front yard. One after another, The black sport utility vehicles stood motionless beneath the fading Colorado sky, their polished paint reflecting the last traces of sunset. Neighbors watched from porches and driveways, whispering to one another, trying to understand why a convoy that belonged outside a corporate headquarters had arrived at the home of the town's humble mechanic. Ethan stepped out first, instinctively opening Lily's door before offering Olivia a reassuring glance. "Looks like someone is expecting you," he said with a calm smile. Olivia's face lost its color. She recognized the lead vehicle immediately. There was no mistaking it. It belonged to her mother's executive security team. The front passenger door opened, followed by two security professionals who positioned themselves respectfully near the driveway, without raising their voices or making sudden movements. Behind them, another door slowly opened. Victoria Hayes stepped onto the gravel wearing a tailored navy coat that seemed untouched by the long journey. She stood with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms, headlines, and impossible decisions. Yet beneath that composure was the unmistakable expression of a mother who had not slept. Her eyes found Olivia within seconds. Relief flashed across her face before it disappeared behind years of disciplined self-control. "Olivia," she said softly. The young woman remained frozen beside Ethan's truck. Lily looked back and forth between them with innocent confusion before quietly reaching for Ethan's hand. Ethan squeezed her little fingers gently, sensing that something much larger than he understood was unfolding before them. Victoria slowly approached, stopping several feet away. "I have been looking for you everywhere." Olivia lowered her eyes. "I know." The simple answer carried more emotion than an argument ever could. Victoria's attention then shifted toward Ethan. Her expression became careful, protective, and measured. "Are you Ethan Brooks?" He nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am." "You allowed my daughter into your home?" she asked. "She needed help," Ethan replied. "It was raining. She was alone. That was enough." Victoria studied him for several long seconds. "Did you know who she was?" Ethan looked from Victoria back to Olivia before answering honestly. "No, she never told me her name until now." Around them, neighbors leaned forward, tried to hear every word. Some quietly wondered whether the mechanic had unknowingly become part of a national headline. Others feared he was about to be blamed for something he never intended. The evening air felt perfectly still, as though the mountains themselves were waiting. Victoria turned toward Olivia once more. "Did he prevent you from leaving?" Olivia immediately shook her head. "No." "Did he ask you for money?" "Never." "Did he ask about our family?" "Not once." Victoria hesitated before asking the final question. "Then why did you stay?" Olivia looked toward the small farmhouse where warm light spilled from the kitchen windows. She glanced at the child's drawing folded safely inside her borrowed flannel pocket before meeting her mother's eyes again. Her voice was quiet, but every person standing nearby heard every word. "Because for the first time in years, someone cared whether I was safe before they cared who I was." The whispers across the neighborhood stopped. Even the security team lowered their eyes. Victoria slowly turned back toward Ethan, and for the first time since arriving, the guarded distance in her expression began to soften. Without realizing it, the struggling single father had given her daughter something no amount of wealth, influence, or success had been able to provide, and in that silent moment, the balance of the entire conversation quietly changed. The evening remained remarkably quiet after Olivia's words, as though even the wind moving through the tall pines had chosen to listen instead of speak. Victoria Hayes looked toward the warmly lit farmhouse once more, then back at Ethan Brooks. For years, she had built one of the largest companies in America by reading people within minutes, separating honesty from ambition with almost perfect accuracy. Yet the man standing before her did not fit any pattern she recognized. His clothes carried traces of engine grease. His boots were worn from years of hard work. His truck had more miles behind it than most luxury cars would ever see. Still, there was something stronger than confidence in the way he stood. There was quiet dignity. "May I ask you something?" Victoria said. Ethan nodded. "Of course. Why did you bring a stranger into your home?" Ethan glanced toward Lily, who still stood beside him holding his hand. Because one day I hope that if my daughter is ever lost, cold, or frightened, somebody else's father will do the same for her. No one answered. Several members of the security team slowly lowered their eyes. Victoria herself seemed unable to speak for several seconds. Olivia watched her mother carefully. She had seen executives silence entire boardrooms. She had seen politicians hesitate under Victoria's questions. She had never seen her mother struggle to find words. Finally, Victoria looked at her daughter. "Come home with me." Olivia smiled sadly. "Home?" she asked quietly. "Mother, I have houses. I have apartments. I have security teams. I have assistants who schedule every hour of my life. But yesterday morning, I realized I have not felt at home in years." Victoria's shoulders dropped ever so slightly. "Why did you never tell me?" Olivia's eyes filled with emotion, though her voice remained steady. "Because every time I tried, another meeting seemed more important. Every conversation became another business decision. I stopped feeling like your daughter and started feeling like another responsibility on your calendar." The words landed with gentle honesty instead of accusation, making them impossible to dismiss. Victoria looked away toward the mountains glowing beneath the last light of dusk. She remembered birthdays interrupted by conference calls, family dinners canceled because investors were waiting, vacations shortened by emergency meetings. None of those decisions had felt unreasonable at the time. Together, they had quietly built a wall she had never intended to create. Lily broke the silence by walking over to Olivia and placing the folded crayon, drawing into her hands once again. "You forgot this," she said with a bright smile. Olivia unfolded the picture and stared at the three stick figures standing beneath the smiling yellow sun. Victoria noticed the words written across the top in uneven letters. "Kind people stay together." Something inside her softened. Money had purchased private islands, skyscrapers, and companies around the world, yet it had never bought a drawing made with complete sincerity. Ethan spoke gently into the silence. "Miss Hayes, your daughter is safe. That is all I ever wanted." Victoria turned back toward him, her expression transformed by humility instead of authority. "Mr. Brooks," she replied quietly, "I spent an entire day believing I needed to rescue my daughter. Standing here now, I am beginning to understand that perhaps you already did, not from danger, but from a loneliness I never realized she was carrying." As darkness settled across Cedar Ridge, no one hurried to leave. The convoy waited. The neighbors quietly returned. Inside, and beneath the soft glow of one small farmhouse porch light, three adults began seeing one another not through wealth, status, or reputation, but through the simple truth that kindness had accomplished what power never could. Victoria looked toward the waiting convoy before turning back to Olivia with a gentleness that surprised everyone present. "You do not have to leave this minute," she said quietly. "If you need another day to breathe, then take another day." Olivia searched her mother's face, almost expecting the offer to disappear, but it remained there, sincere and unguarded. "Thank you," she whispered. The security team quietly stepped back without objection, and one by one the black sport utility vehicles pulled away from the farmhouse, leaving only a single vehicle parked discreetly down the road in case it was needed. As the last engine faded into the distance, the peaceful sounds of Cedar Ridge slowly returned. Crickets filled the evening air. A gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh-cut grass across the porch. Ethan looked at both women with his familiar calm smile. "We were about to make dinner," he said. "There is enough for everyone if you do not mind simple food." Victoria hesitated before accepting. "I would like that." Inside the modest farmhouse, Lily eagerly set an extra place at the table, while Olivia helped stir a pot of homemade chicken noodle soup. Victoria watched quietly from the kitchen doorway. Her daughter moved naturally through the tiny kitchen, laughing softly when Lily insisted that every bowl needed exactly the same number of crackers. It was such an ordinary disagreement that it felt extraordinary. Victoria realized she could not remember the last ordinary evening they had shared together. Dinner was filled with stories instead of schedules. Lily talked excitedly about her science project. Ethan laughed about an old pickup truck that somehow managed to drive 20 miles with nothing more than hope and determination. Olivia listened more than she spoke, but every few minutes another genuine smile appeared on her face. Victoria noticed something remarkable. Her daughter was not pretending to be happy. She simply was. After the dishes were washed, Lily disappeared into the living room and returned carrying an old board game with faded corners. "Family game night," she announced proudly. Ethan chuckled. "I think our guests deserve a warning. She takes this very seriously." Lily folded her arms with playful determination. "Winning matters." Olivia laughed. "Then I should probably be worried." For the next hour, laughter echoed through the little farmhouse. Victoria accidentally landed on the same space 3 turns in a row, making Lily giggle until tears filled her eyes. Ethan accepted every defeat with exaggerated disappointment that only made Lily laugh harder. Olivia had not laughed like that since she was a little girl. She caught her mother watching from across the table and quietly reached for her hand. Victoria squeezed it gently, saying nothing because words suddenly felt too small. Later that evening, after Lily had gone upstairs to bed, Victoria and Ethan stood together on the front porch beneath a sky filled with stars untouched by city lights. "Mr. Brooks," Victoria said softly, "today I watched my daughter become herself again. I have spent years trying to give her everything money could provide, but somehow I forgot to protect the things money cannot replace." Ethan rested his hands on the porch railing and looked toward the quiet mountains. "Children do not remember the size of a house," he replied. "They remember who made them feel safe inside it." Victoria nodded slowly, carrying those words deep into her heart. At that moment, Olivia stepped onto the porch holding Lily's crayon, drawing once more. Under the warm glow of the porch light, the simple picture seemed more valuable than any masterpiece hanging inside a corporate office, because for the first time in many years, it represented not what a family looked like, but what a family felt like. The next morning arrived with a quiet golden sunrise stretching across the Colorado mountains, and for the first time in what felt like years, every person inside Ethan Brooks' small farmhouse woke with a little more peace than the day before. Lily raced downstairs carrying her favorite storybook, while the smell of pancakes drifted through the kitchen once again. Olivia smiled as she helped pour orange juice into 3 mismatched glasses, and Victoria stood silently beside the window, watching the simple morning unfold. There were no assistants waiting with schedules, no conference calls interrupting breakfast, and no endless stream of notifications demanding immediate attention. There was only the sound of laughter, the clink of dishes, and a little girl asking whether everyone wanted extra blueberries on their pancakes. Victoria quietly realized that this ordinary morning was worth more than many of the extraordinary moments she had spent chasing success. After breakfast, she reached into her briefcase and removed a neatly prepared folder. She placed it gently on the kitchen table before looking at Ethan. "Mr. Brooks," she said with sincere gratitude, "my attorneys prepared several ways to thank you. There is enough here to pay off your home, expand your business, and provide for Lily's future." Ethan glanced at the folder but never reached for it. Instead, he smiled with the same quiet humility that had never changed from the rainy night they first met. "Miss Hayes," he answered gently, "I appreciate your kindness, but I did not help Olivia because I expected my life to become easier. I helped her because she needed someone to stop." Victoria looked at him for several silent seconds before slowly closing the folder again. She finally understood that some people could never be repaid with money because what they gave had never been for sale. Olivia stepped closer, her eyes warm with gratitude. "Then let us thank you differently." Ethan raised an eyebrow with quiet curiosity. "Victoria Nadif, Brooks Auto and Towing has earned a reputation for honesty. Hayes Global sponsors community development projects across the country. I would like your garage to become the first small business we support without changing a single thing about how you run it. No publicity campaign, no television interviews, no corporate ownership, just new equipment, scholarships for local trade students, and opportunities for hard-working families here in Cedar Ridge." Ethan looked around his modest garage through the kitchen window before answering. If it helps this town more than it helps me, then I will gladly accept. Victoria smiled, and this time her smile reached her eyes. Weeks later, the improvements quietly transformed the little repair shop without changing its heart. Young mechanics found apprenticeships. Veterans returning home found steady work. High school students interested in skilled trades received scholarships with no expectation other than doing honest work. Ethan still wore the same grease-stained work shirt. He still charged fair prices. He still trusted people before judging them. Olivia visited Cedar Ridge often, sometimes bringing her mother, sometimes arriving alone just to spend a weekend helping Lily bake cookies or walking through the mountains where nobody cared about family fortunes or newspaper headlines. Victoria gradually learned to leave her phone inside the car whenever she visited. Business could wait for one afternoon. Family could not. One evening, nearly a year after that rainy night, the four of them sat together on the same front porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Lily leaned against Ethan's shoulder and smiled at Olivia. "I'm glad Daddy stopped that night." Olivia squeezed the little girl's hand. "So am I." Victoria looked toward Ethan with quiet respect. One decision changed more lives than you will ever know. Ethan watched the last light settle across the valley before speaking softly. Sometimes people think miracles arrive with flashing lights, great wealth, or impossible events. But most miracles begin when an ordinary person chooses kindness while everyone else keeps driving. The evening grew still, and beneath a sky filled with countless stars, no one felt the need to say another word, because the greatest proof of grace was already sitting together on one small porch where dignity had been chosen over fear, compassion had become stronger than status, and a single act of goodness had quietly brought an entire family home.